Hello, Rams fans! The Los Angeles Rams are getting ready for the start of the new season, and today we need to talk about one of the most important players on this year's roster. I'll tell you all the details in just a moment, but first, make sure you've already hit the like button, but only do it if you're a true Rams fan. And of course, if possible, write this: "Go Rams! My heart beats blue and white." I have to admit, I'm really excited for the start of the season. Something tells me the Rams are heading to the Super Bowl. It will be incredible to see Matthew Stafford and Puka lifting that trophy once again. And he's exactly who I want to start talking about in today's news. A remarkable conversation about Puka Nacua is gaining momentum after comments from NFL legend Calvin Johnson reignited the debate about the Rams star's potential for the upcoming season. During a recent charity golf event, Johnson was asked which active player was most likely to break the NFL's single-season receiving yards record. His answer immediately caught the attention of the football world. According to Johnson, if he had to choose one player in the league today, he would pick Puka Nacua. Johnson pointed directly to the connection between Nacua and Matthew Stafford as one of the reasons he believes the Rams receiver has a real chance to break the record. He explained that Nacua is still catching passes from Stafford and described the Rams receiver as a dynamic and incredible receiver. He also stated that if Nacua were able to break the record, he would like to be there to witness the achievement. Those comments alone are enough to make Rams fans pay attention, especially since they come from the very player who currently holds the record in question. What makes this story even more interesting is that Johnson didn't mention Nacua as just one of several candidates. The discussion centered on identifying the player most likely to challenge the record, and Nacua was the name that came out of his mouth. That endorsement carries significant weight, considering Johnson's own place in NFL history and his understanding of what it takes to produce a historic season as a receiver. The conversation naturally leads to an important question: how realistic is this possibility? Looking at the numbers discussed in the report, there is at least a statistical foundation for the excitement. Last season, Nacua averaged 107.2 receiving yards per game across 16 games. To surpass Johnson's record in a 17-game season, a player would need to average approximately 115.5 receiving yards per game. That means Nacua was just over 8 yards per game away from the pace required to seriously threaten the record. When you break it down that way, the challenge still appears enormous, but it no longer feels impossible. The report emphasized that Nacua has already established himself as one of the league's elite receivers. It pointed to his production early in his career and highlighted how perceptions around the league have continued to change. The argument presented was that Nacua is no longer viewed merely as a talented young player. Instead, he has forced his way into conversations involving the very best receivers in football through consistent production and game-changing performances. Another major point raised involves timing. The upcoming season may represent one of the best opportunities Nacua will ever have to make a run at such a historic achievement. The reasoning is tied directly to Stafford. While nobody knows exactly what the future holds, the report noted that there remains uncertainty regarding how many more seasons Stafford will continue playing. Even though he has a contract, retirement decisions remain personal choices for NFL veterans. Because of that uncertainty, the current partnership between Stafford and Nacua becomes a major storyline. From the perspective presented in the report, there may not be another situation in the future that offers Nacua a more favorable combination of factors. He is paired with a quarterback he already knows, a quarterback whom Johnson himself specifically referenced, and he enters the season as the focal point of expectations surrounding elite receiver production. The discussion also touched on future uncertainty at quarterback. While confidence was expressed regarding Ty Simpson's potential, the report acknowledged that projecting any rookie quarterback is difficult because there is simply no NFL sample size available yet. That uncertainty makes the current moment stand out even more. What is known right now is that Nacua is preparing for a season in a familiar environment with Stafford still leading the offense. Then comes the schedule. One of the most fascinating sections of the discussion examined individual matchups throughout the season and how they could affect Nacua's pursuit of massive statistical numbers. The season begins against San Francisco. The report noted that Nacua has previously found ways to impact games against the 49ers, including scoring touchdowns in both meetings last season, while totaling 149 combined yards in those contests. While those performances did not produce 100-yard games individually, the belief expressed was that Nacua can still create significant production in that matchup. After that comes a matchup against the Giants, which was described as another opportunity for Nacua to produce at a high level. The report argued that the Giants' secondary should not be viewed as an obstacle capable of slowing him down consistently. Week 3 presents a very different challenge. The Denver Broncos were identified as potentially the most difficult individual matchup on the schedule because of Patrick Surtain. The report called Surtain the best cornerback in the NFL and suggested that this game could feature several one-on-one opportunities between him and Nacua. Even though the Rams moved Nacua around the formation, this was still presented as one of the toughest tests he may face all season. The challenge continues in Week 4 against Philadelphia, where a talented secondary featuring Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean was highlighted. According to the discussion, the back-to-back stretch against Denver and Philadelphia could represent the most difficult two-week sequence of the entire season from Nacua's perspective. But after those games, the outlook becomes much more favorable. The report identified a lengthy stretch beginning around Week 5 as a critical period if Nacua is serious about chasing history. Matchups against Buffalo, Arizona, Las Vegas, the Chargers, Washington, Arizona again, Green Bay, and Kansas City were discussed as opportunities where major receiving totals could accumulate. In fact, the argument made was very direct. If Nacua is going to threaten the receiving record, this section of the schedule must become the foundation of his campaign. Those weeks cannot merely be productive. They need to be explosive. They need to include the kind of performances that dramatically increase season-long yardage totals. The report repeatedly returned to that idea. Historic records are not broken by consistency alone. They are usually broken when consistency is combined with several extraordinary games. That means maximizing favorable matchups becomes essential. Any stretch of games where a receiver posts modest numbers instead of dominant production can make the difference between an excellent season and a record-breaking one. The later portion of the schedule becomes more complicated again. Another meeting with San Francisco appears. Dallas enters the picture. Seattle closes the season. Tampa Bay also presents challenges due to talent in the secondary. The discussion suggested that while these games remain opportunities for production, they are unlikely to be as forgiving as the earlier middle section of the schedule. Because of that, the middle stretch takes on even greater importance. If Nacua enters the final weeks already carrying enormous momentum and massive yardage totals, then every game becomes part of a genuine chase. If not, the increasing difficulty of the schedule could make the climb much steeper. Yet above every statistic, every matchup, and every projection, one factor was identified as the true key: health. More than any defensive scheme, more than any cornerback, and more than any schedule analysis, staying on the field was presented as the deciding factor in whether Nacua can realistically pursue the record. The report reviewed portions of his injury history, including time missed due to previous injuries and a PCL sprain that cost him games in 2024. The conclusion was simple. A record chase of this magnitude almost certainly requires a full season of availability. Missing games makes the challenge dramatically harder. When discussing a record that demands elite production every single week, every missed opportunity matters. The margin between historic and merely outstanding can be surprisingly small over the course of an entire season. That is what makes Calvin Johnson's comments so compelling. They were not made about a player who needs several years of development before entering the conversation. They were made about a receiver who is already producing at an elite level and who enters the season with an opportunity to prove that even the most ambitious projections are worth taking seriously. For Rams fans, the idea itself is enough to create excitement. The holder of the record looked around the league, considered the options, and landed on Puka Nacua as the player most capable of challenging that mark. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen, but the conversation has officially begun, and every yard Nacua gains this season will be watched through that lens. What do you think, Rams fans? Does Puka Nacua truly have a realistic chance to break the NFL single-season receiving yardage record? Or is the challenge still too great, even with Calvin Johnson's endorsement? Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and click the video on your screen. The latest Rams news and developments first arrive right here.